We want to see what worked, what did not work, what were the factors that inhibited execution of these good ideas, what were the institutional failures. And so our parliamentarians, we all need help to have that kind of research support, because otherwise it's one man. You're running in your constituency. One man cannot understand energy, education, agriculture. Otherwise, you only have the stories, but you don't have the in-depth public policy knowledge. It's tough. But I want to encourage more people to consider parliamentary work, and your question is very relevant. Whether it's education or it's another institution, Parliament is also an institution. The quality of representation matters very much, because they have such power, a lot of powers. If you don't know how to exercise that power, you will not have the right laws, the right public policy, or the right oversight functions performed.
You created a massive following of people who may, currently be despondent because of you did not become the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Will their voices still be heard? And is Parliament a good enough consolation prize for those who voted you to be the President?
I'm happy you recognize that I had a massive following. Many of you followed me around the country. You know those numbers were not fake, they were real. And I hope others realize that those people are still there. They still believe in change. They still have hopes and aspirations. Some of those were as young as 14. You saw a lot of high school, secondary school children, so a lot of young university people. They're still there. We intend to mobilize them again. This time we will not wait till 2023. We will start mobilizing them later in the year again, because we have to go back to them, to tell them that they must keep hope alive, to tell them that their determination has to continue, because they still can change. They still can change. Also, you asked whether being a member of Parliament is a consolation prize. What I want also the young generation to learn from our collective experience in the NGC, in the KKY movement, and other independents who were part of us, is that you also, part of leadership is how you deal with failure. You don't always succeed. You meet a lot of obstacles in life. Do you just drop dead? Or do you just attribute it now to fate? No. You pick up. You re-strategize. You plan again. You re-engage. For me, I have come to terms with what happened. I know some of the structural barriers we had. I know some of the institutional challenges we faced. Institutions that are supposed to make governance work well. You remember I used to preach a lot about corruption. And I said to people, institutional corruption could be worse than stealing money. Yes. And I think some of that came into play. I hope people take those serious. That corruption is not just about the money people steal. It is when people are in a position of authority in key institutions and they refuse to exercise their responsibilities the way they should. The way they should. And that affects nations for decades going forward. And so I'll just say to my followers, keep hope alive. Let us remobilize. Let us also play our accountability role. Let us make sure government understands that yes, as a party, political party, we reserve the right to protest. It is part of democracy. It is part of our responsibility. So yes, if things infringe on our human rights, on our basic rights to access to things, we have the right of protest. We have the right to speak out, whether in the media, organized media, or we rally. We are a legal entity in Sierra Leone. As a political party, we have representation in Parliament too. So with our parliamentarians, with the media, we're going to have our own newspaper soon. And our ability to mobilize. Yes, we can mobilize people to make our voices heard. And we would want to do that for our people. We would also want to help government in the sense that we want our supporters to also help with accountability. So when government starts issuing out contracts, you know, government is the biggest business in town, to people to begin to build schools under free education, we want to give that information to the people. So the people knows that this man was given a contract to build schools in your community. He was supposed to build 3 buildings, whatever it was. Now you check whether he's doing it. If he's not, you come to Freetown and bring the message home. Or you go to the resident minister to deliver that message, or your member of parliament. Because we cannot have business as usual. In this nation, it's 1/3 or less. So part of our responsibility then is to mobilize our constituents the moment we know that yes, in Samu Chiefdom or in constituency 062, the government has given money to build 4 schools or to upgrade schools from JSS to SS, as we need now in my community, or resources have been provided to approve the schools that exist. We want to know who is giving that money, who is giving the contract, when they were given, and how much. So we go and inform the people. So that is part of our responsibility as well, and that's one of the services we can provide for Mr. President. He doesn't need to wait till the Auditor General comes in 2 years later. We want to help him make sure that his new direction works by being the policeman now in communities to check whether those that he is giving money, the government is giving money to deliver the services on agriculture, on his fisheries initiative, on his education initiative, his mining initiatives, that in fact they're doing it in the interest of the people. And I know once he knows, he'll take corrective action. Because sometimes when these problems fester and they're delayed 2-3 years, it is difficult to come back. And the typical Saloman say, na for be a law left and so.
Let's talk about national cohesion. Given the ongoing recent attacks across the country, what would your advice be to the current government, and how should they handle this particular matter? And what would you say to your supporters?
Well, the harassment is taking place everywhere. Even in my constituency 062, I see some elements in, I just came, you know, I'm there almost every weekend. There are some elements in Cambia now. I say this on public TV. There are elements in Cambia telling people they will make Cambia ungovernable for NGC. Yeah? These are saboteurs. They only survive in politics when there's chaos. Some people are just plain vigilantes. They believe they're serving the interest of their political parties, yeah, for short-term benefit, so they and their party can gain dominance. And I see this also happening in other parts of the country. Some people, it's vengeance, it's revenge. It's a threat to national security. It's a threat to development. I would say to the government, of course, they have the number one priority, the number one responsibility of the nation to ensure the safety and security of their citizens. They should take it serious. If you go back to all the reports about the rebel war, some of the causes of the rebel war go back as far back as the 60s and 70s. There were cases in this country, I know that because I was in government here during the war period. I used to go to some of those workshops. Rebels will come into a town and they will look for the grave of the chief. They will take the skeletons out, or some other elders, and they will burn them. Why? These are grievances that ran back decades. NGOs used to explain to us that typical rebel movements don't do that. So it means there were elements that were also settling scores. This is why the current spate of violence in this country should be checked. It should be checked. These things fester. People are hurt. They keep the grudge till they have an opportunity to hit back. So I believe government should take it serious. And it's not a one-off thing. Government should make a clear statement that there's zero tolerance for this. Vigilantes are not allowed here now. We have a new dispensation. Politics is over. We need to come together. It should not just be verbalized. We need to see people acting on it. We need to see them visiting more regularly, not once, but regularly going to those communities where they see these tensions to cool people down. We've had a few incidents in Cambia. We've had a few incidents in my constituency as well. In fact, in this well of parliament, I got a report of one. I called the LUC of the area immediately. I said, please check. And also what is happening in this country, people fabricate stories quickly. They go and do something wrong, then they fabricate and make it a political issue quickly, because that gives them more crowds and more mobilization and hides the wrong thing they've done. So I would encourage Mr. President himself to really take a stand on this, to reach out to those who are hurt, to say, let's come together. Remember, without security, there cannot be development. There cannot be. And again, I warn that these grudges stay long and people come back 5-10 years to hit back. So indeed, I want the political leaders now that are in charge of the country to be visiting those areas. They're resident ministers, and it is not to go there for partisan interest. It is to go there to say, let us settle the issues. Let us cool the tempers. And I tell my supporters all over, I say, take a cue from me. I be one be president. God no mark and this term. You see, I vex, I no vex. Let we take and sow, but let we begin work now for sake of Mama Salon. Now not time for development. So that's the kind of approach I think many should take and go back to communities where there is tension. What I don't like hearing now, and I say this on public TV, now this them been done do we? Oh, waiting them in they say wait them in they do this to we. People like me can say the same, but we are not doing that. It is not in the interest of the nation. I see people wanting to do corrupt practices because now so the other one them been don't do. Scale up what was good and radically change what was bad. People don't change governments because they were happy. They change governments because they were disgruntled about something. So people cannot be in governance. I'm not saying they're doing it en masse, but I hear people making those refrains. You know, maybe it's not intentional, an accident. But I see it in social media as well. Oh, why are they complaining now? When people used to do this to us in 2007, they said nothing. No, we don't want the bad practices. We want it stopped. That is why we said change. Not so? So don't come back and try to justify violence or intimidation because they may not do one with you 10 years ago. That is wrong. Because after 10 years, somebody, they come back do one to you or you people there. We should just say, hell no. This is not tolerated anymore. And I expect that now. Because yes, change did come. We changed the government. If change came, we scale up what is good. We radically change what was bad. Let we know you read that one, they say, na so them in they do one. Na so them been don't do. If not that not the case, na so you been for campaign. You been for don't campaign to people them. You should have said, vote for me because they were doing these bad things. And we have to be in a position, some people like me, eventually, to begin to talk to the public when we see these behaviors. That no, you are taking us back. You are not taking us forward. If we see them. But I use it, again, since this is media, people begin to misunderstand what leaders like me say. I put this in the context of what you asked. You asked about violence and intimidation. It is wrong. Whoever perpetrates. Some of us were victims of that. We survived it, but not everybody can survive it. But it festers disgruntlement, disenchantment, and anger, and people will come back and vent. We don't want that happening.
We hope to have a continuous engagement with you over the coming years, but with regard to the future, what should the people of Sierra Leone, those who supported you in the 2018 elections and those you think should support you, what should they expect from you?
Well, first of all, let me say they should not be angry with anybody who decides. Remember, we were a coalition of progressives. There were some from certain parties, political parties that were not happy. Some now I hear them saying, we want to go back home. It is okay. It's part of their freedom. They should go if they want to go. Those of us who are dedicated to the core values of NGC, we stay. Yes, and they should expect from me and the leadership of the party continuous engagement, that we will continue to stand for what we believe. We will continue to stand for constitutionality and rule of law. Those are fundamental reasons why we formed the NGC. So we would keep reminding our supporters, about those core values. We will keep demonstrating to them that even when it is difficult, even when it is not attractive, we will take a neutral stand when it is necessary, or we stand on the side of the Constitution and rule of law instead of just following the wind. We hope that example will help them, but they should also expect constructive opposition. We will support this government to help them help this country in their new direction when it is necessary. We'll do it openly without any fear or favor.
Thank you very much, Dr. KKY Interviewed, for talking to the nation for AYV.
Thank you for having me.